each of these illustrious alumni are going to talk about what job they have and how they found their jobs. All of them graduated fairly recently, except for our elder person, Brad. They all have jobs that are relevant to their majors. They're all pursuing career paths that are relevant to what they did here at Queens College. So we thought it would be helpful for you to get advice from them themselves. And then they're only going to talk for a few minutes each, and then we're going to open it up to your questions because that's really a big part of why we're here. And then if there's time at the end, we're going to do some just have some time to mill around so you can ask individual questions if you have. So I think we'll get started. Why don't we start with Maggie McCabe, who's with the Department of Environmental Conservation, and she was an environmental studies major.
Hello, Maggie McCabe, and I am an environmental educator for the DEC. I got hired last April. I graduated last December, so it's just over a year I've had the position. I also have an education background as well, so my environmental studies and education helped with that. What I do is, there's 3 of us in the education division, and we travel all of Long Island, Suffolk, and Nassau County. We teach different programs at different schools all around the island. So pretty much every day is a different school. We do first grade through college, and we do a lot of wildlife programs. Older kids, we do a lot of international trade, wildlife, different. We have a recycling program we do. So the schools contact us, we're state funded, and so we go to a lot of the lower income, higher demographic schools that can't afford nature centers to come visit. And it's a lot of fun. Dream job.
She's always posting really cool pictures on Facebook.
Yeah. Our office is full of animals, so I just take selfies all day long.
And how did you get the job?
I didn't even realize that I applied to the DEC when I did, but it was through Indeed.com. They had posted an ad. My position didn't require a civil service exam, but permanent positions at the DEC do, and they're offered throughout the year for different positions. They're general ones that you can just take to get yourself in the system, and then if a position opens up and you qualify for that, they would contact you. If you're looking for specific positions, you can get on the list to be notified when those exams are available to take.
And can you just say how long after you graduated did you find the job, and did your internship, was it helpful or irrelevant?
I got hired 4 months after graduation, and I think the internship I did it with State Parks at the Urban Field Station, and my supervisor, I think my relationship with her, I'm still in contact with her, really helped with networking. So I had her as a really strong contact, and I met a lot of other people in the State Parks division, which I've actually run into working for, city parks, working for the state DEC. We've kind of run into each other again. So it's kind of all intertwined. I think it was definitely helpful.
That's what I'm talking about, internships, it's networking.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Samantha Addeo, she works with the Urban Archive, and she was an urban studies major.
Hey, I'm Sam. I'm actually finishing my master's this semester here at Queens College. I'm a BA MA student. And actually, I've been working with Urban Archive for a little over a year, since last April, May. I started as an intern. I was on as an intern for a month. And what Urban Archive is basically an organization that centralizes New York City's historic institutions' assets. So that means photo archives, all the digital collections, and we work with open data and various institutions across the city to basically develop databases and software for them to more easily access all of these different, basically New York City has hundreds of thousands of old archives. So that's what we do. And we have that as a web platform and also as an app. And the goal of the organization is to basically help these institutions extend their reach beyond their museum's walls, such as the Museum of the City of New York. We even have the Department of Records that we work with. And so that's kind of part of the mission. I work directly with partnerships and then also with basically different types of, we've only been around for actually like a year and a half, 2 years, so there's a lot of like different things that everyone on the team is a part of, so it's been cool for me to be able to experience different things within the organization, such as working with data directly. So if you're interested in data, like that's definitely a cool aspect to this organization. And then as well as like researching New York City's history, a lot of what I do is like archival research and basically working directly with these different institutions' assets and inputting them into our own database to help these institutions. So I found it last year when I was finishing undergrad, about like a month or two before I graduated. I was realizing I was finishing and I was like, I should start looking at jobs. So I had followed a bunch of organizations that I found to be cool and that really aligned with my interests. And Urban Archive was one of them. I reached out, landed an internship, and then once I graduated, I started working part-time and full-time between being in school now and stuff like that.
So you cold called them
Yes.
and said you offered that you could do a free, work.
Well, they were hiring at that time, so I kind of got in at like the right moment. And being that it's a relatively new organization at the same time, it's been great for me to be able to. I jumped in at the right time, and there was an opportunity to extend my stay beyond just interning there. So.
And what role, if any, did your internship? Do you want to talk about what you did for your internship and if that helped?
Sure, yeah. At Queens College, I was with the Queens Historical Society, and I basically did research in Long Island City. I created just like a big report on different types of gentrification pressures and the pace of development in Long Island City in like the Dutch Kills area, which is like the largest housing projects in the nation. So that definitely assisted, and now actually Queens Historical is one of the institutions that partners with Urban Archive. So it was cool. Working with the museum and working with a small community organization kind of gave me a lens to see the smaller side and also like the bigger picture through Urban Archive. So.
Okay, and Brad Rebeiro is at NYU working in graduate admissions for the Steinhardt School and was an environmental studies major.
Yep, and she called me old. I graduated in 2012, and I originally, when I graduated, I tried to find a job like, I feel like what you're doing. I'm not sure exactly what it is, even though you're very specific, but like I tried to start working with the Department of like Environmental Protection, EPA, any like sort of conservation type of job after I finished, but no one would hire me because all what I had done so far was like be an administrative assistant here because I was doing my work study, and I didn't really have much experience beyond college. So what I did while I was in college though was in 2009, I feel like I applied for this thing that was going on at Queens College. I was able to study abroad and go and live in Cape Town, South Africa, and I collected baboon poop, and I worked in a lab, and I got all of this like experience in school, just being involved in school. So I got to go live in Cape Town and work with all these like amazing people, faculty from the anthropology department here. I don't know if Larissa Fidel is still here. She is. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. Obviously, I was in Cape Town running behind a female chocolate baboon from sun up till sundown, just kind of like seeing what she was eating. It wasn't really necessarily environmentally studies related. I was just doing my class, and then I got involved in this thing, and then it ended up changing my whole kind of career trajectory, because I feel like if I didn't get involved in school so much, NYU would have been like, like not that the job that I entered NYU doing was really amazing. I was just clerical. I was pushing papers. I was doing non-credit student services registration. So picking up calls, everyone was pissed at me, like, everyone's so entitled at NYU, and everyone so wants to bite your head off if they're not getting the service that they need because they pay so much money. Which is true. They should be getting good service, but anyways. So I did that for 3 years, and then while I was at NYU, I was taking some certificate courses. I wasn't ready to jump right into like grad school right away, even though that was my plan. I knew that after I finished working in like an admin job here at QC through work study and being so involved in like research and getting to do this fun study abroad stuff that I got to put all over like my resume, I was like, maybe I need to work in a school because I've been surrounded by professors, been surrounded by grad students, been surrounded by this sort of like academic environment that just this one experience provided me. That I was like, all right, maybe I'll just try to work at a school because I don't know what I want to do for graduate school, but I want to do something because I know I'm gonna need to do something because I mean, everyone's gonna have a bachelor's in the room pretty soon, but you're probably gonna have to go back to school because that's just where we are with, you know, the world. So I knew that I would have had to do that from like a young age, so I wanted to start working at a school because I can't afford grad school, and I wanted tuition remission. So I knew that that existed, and I tried to get into Columbia and NYU relentlessly. After I graduated, I applied for jobs on top of jobs on top of jobs, and I went on many interviews, and I got to meet a lot of interesting people, and I got to realize the caliber of the type of education at those schools and who they expected to hire. And eventually, with all that training of me going on, let's call it 30 plus interviews, definitely more than 30 interviews, let's call it 50 plus interviews, because it was 6 months after I finished here. I was just like interview, and eventually I landed some interview with this lady because she had graduated from Queens College as well. She became my boss for 2 years. She was great, and she probably interviewed me because my resume said Queens College. So things like that happen too. You know, you network and you don't even know that you're doing it sometimes for your alumni. But anyways, so I got in there and then started taking non-credit courses to get a certificate because I wasn't ready for grad school. I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. And then I know my story's really long. I might go more than 10 minutes, but I'm almost done. I didn't know what I was ready to do yet, and I got my certificate in leadership and organizational development because I felt like that would help me move up in NYU somehow.
And you didn't have to pay for that.
Oh, and I didn't have to pay for that because it was already a part of tuition remission. The benefits of working at a institution of higher education is you probably get to go to school there for free, or at least 90% off. So now that I know what I want to study, I'm an admissions officer now. I've kind of seen all the programs that exist in my sort of college at NYU because it's 16 different schools. And I ended up working in the same school that I should probably get a master's from, and now I'm going to start in 2 weeks my first graduate course for my master's in international education. That's what I'm going to try to get my master's in because NYU is all over. They're in Abu Dhabi, they're in Shanghai, they're in Buenos Aires, and I want to not be in New York. So that's the goal, to get that degree and get out of New York. So that's the story.
Thank you. And we didn't have the internship wasn't required when you.
No, that was 6 years ago, so it was probably an easier program, honestly. Yeah, it sounds like I didn't have to do what you guys do, but.
Right, so I just wanted to say that's why. But I think maybe one other quick thing about your story that I think is good for people to hear is, so you and I have stayed in touch.
Right.
And
networking. That's what I forgot to drill into your heads. People like Melissa and people that do events for you like this and who actually have a care about what you guys do after you finish, she's someone to, really benefit and use. To not make it sound like you should use her, but she has your best interest in heart, and she used to do stuff like this for me, and I wasn't as involved as I should have been, even though it sounded like I did this like amazing thing and I was like all up in school all the time. I wasn't. I was someone that used to keep their head down and just go to class and go home right after. I didn't even live far from here. I used to live right in Jamaica, Queens. I used to just go to school and come back. I would have probably done even better than I did had I taken advantage of more things like what Melissa is holding for you guys today. So I had kept in contact with Melissa after I took 1 or 2 courses. I wasn't an urban studies person, and I had just taken a few courses with her, and I kept in contact. I sat in the front. I was annoying. I was asked questions, and she ended up writing 2 recommendation letters for me. I had wanted to start my master's in environmental conservation education. I applied. I got in, and life was crazy for a second. My sister had a baby. They still live in my house, so my whole life is crazy. That's why I didn't start grad school yet. Maybe too much information for you guys. But I got into the environmental conservation program, and then I kind of realized, like, do I want to be teaching environmental conservation, or do I just want to keep my, all of that sort of like passion that I have, because I do have a bachelor's in environmental studies, and just move with that forward with an international ed sort of master's. So I realized that, and Melissa ended up writing 2 letters of recommendation for me a whole year apart from one another, because I came to this thing, I kept in contact, we keep a good rapport, like all of this stuff you guys should be doing with other professors besides Melissa. Now everyone's going to want to be Melissa's best friend, right? Other professors, you want more than one person, and just keep that stuff in mind. It's important for when you get your job in grad school, if you guys do that.
And if you think, you might think your professors won't remember you, but often we do remember you. So I get a lot of notes from people who graduated 2 years ago saying, I don't think you probably remember me, but I do. And
I might have said that to her. I was like, I don't know.
We don't have that many students, or are that old yet. So, so don't be shy. The worst that can happen is, one professor doesn't remember you and they say, I'm sorry, I can't write a letter for you, but you can go on to another one. But it's important to get those academic letters, usually for a job or for graduate school. Okay, and last but not least, Mikael Kerr, who's working through Americorps for the Suffolk County Land Bank.
Yes.
And was an environmental studies major.
Yeah, I just graduated last year. I started working at the land bank in November, and we're essentially like a quasi-governmental agency. Our main goal is to return underutilized properties back into productive use, and we do that like basically two major ways. The first is we buy vacant and abandoned homes and we fix them up, and then we sell them as affordable housing. And we work with different community groups to kind of find people who are at like around 80% of the AMI. We get them into financial counseling, and we help them kind of get like a fair mortgage to make sure that they can get in the house and stay in the house. And then our second kind of mission is with brownfields and redeveloping brownfields. There's a lot of tax delinquent brownfields on Long Island that essentially no one wants to touch them because of the environmental contamination. So we have an agreement with the DEC that kind of absolves us from the environmental kind of liability of the sites. Mm-hmm. And so what we do then is we do the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessments, and then we essentially kind of come up with a fair price for this, trying to take into the environmental consideration, the back taxes, and we look for developers who are going to submit redevelopment plans to us, which we vet, and we kind of figure out how many jobs they're going to create on Long Island, how they're going to fit into the local town's planning, and we essentially just kind of make sure that they have like a new equitable kind of business that will start up, and they'll also do the environmental remediation on these sites. And I got this job through Americorps, but it actually tied into my internship really well. I interned at Sustainable Long Island, and the executive director, who was the past executive director of Sustainable Long Island, she was there before I was there, but she's now the executive director of the land bank. So I think that kind of helped to kind of get me in, get my foot in the door. And at the time, they were just kind of starting the brownfield program. Well, we are just starting the brownfield program, and they realized they needed someone who could understand the environmental assessments and communicate the environmental concerns to developers in a way that's not as scary. Kind of just like explain things, because people see like 100 parts per billion, they don't know what it means. They say it's over the limit, and they freak out. So they kind of wanted someone who could convey that to developers. So that's what I do. I'm a community assessment coordinator for the land bank. So I kind of work to organize all these things and talk to developers. I write requests for proposals for the environmental reviews. And we just recently closed the first one that I have kind of spearheaded, which is a 20-year vacant old wood-burning power plant on Long Island that I've lived on Long Island most of my life. I had no idea it was there. They were burning wood chips to provide power. They only lasted for 4 years because they were burning treated wood, which they weren't supposed to be doing, and they were burning tires at night. So that they were shut down, and then it's just been vacant for 20 years. And essentially the land bank, our brownfield program was started because Suffolk County doesn't want, like, all these tax delinquent properties, normally the county will just take them and then auction them off to the highest bidder. But with anything that has potential environmental concerns, if the county gets in the chain of title, that opens them up to all the environmental liabilities. So the land bank was created because we can kind of circumvent that And we also can, the county, if they were to sell these properties, they have to make back the back taxes. They can't sell it for less than the back taxes. And a lot of these properties, there may be the assessed value as clean is say, $500,000, but they have a $500,000 cleanup cost on it. Plus the back taxes are of $500,000. So, it's basically completely underwater. So no one wants to buy it. The county can't sell it. So that's why they created the land bank. And I was telling Dr. Checker, one of the classes that was, I think, started my last year is the first year I started the class was environmental risk assessment and management. And that class was really helpful because what we learned, I can hear my class, yeah. What we learned in that class really helped me kind of like speak the language to my boss in my interview, and it helped a lot. So.
And that's through C's. That's an environmental sciences class.
Yeah, but it's not that heavy on science, so don't worry.
And were there any other classes? Did you take the risk assessment class?
Yeah, risk assessment.
And did that help as well?
Yeah, definitely. It was it was very helpful.
That's for the environmental folks.
Yeah, there was a capstone course that I forget what it's called, where you have to, I don't know if they still do it.
With
It was
Professor
like you said,
Hendry?
it was a while ago.
Was it with Professor
Yeah,
Hendry?
that chapter thing. Yeah, that kind of screwed me,
I remember
honestly.
that.
Yeah, I got a C in that class. I tried to, this is not helpful for you guys, but maybe I'm just a little bitter. I should shut up. I'll tell you guys about it.
You're on camera.
Yeah, I'm on camera.
Okay, so are there questions? Does anybody have questions for these people?
Yes.
I have a question for Samantha. I was wondering, so you got some experience doing archival research, and it's historical, and your presentation of your organization sounds very technical. To where, one, do you do very technical stuff, and if so, where did you learn those things? Did you learn that through internships, through classes, or I guess I'm saying where book you went? I don't know.
It's a little bit of self-taught, and then in this last year through Tari's help and Brian Rose's help, I've been taking basically actually classes in different departments that now are being incorporated into the Urban Studies Master's program, such as GIS, which I really recommend everyone to take. And if you're unfamiliar with GIS, it's like mapping of data. And what's really great about Urban Archive is, although I'm on the more what you would call qualitative side of things, I work in tandem every day with developers. So I'm learning the language of all of the back ends from like HTML to CSS to Python. Like that's things that, although I might not fully understand, I could at least communicate and work with in some capacity. And a lot of these softwares, such as like GIS, runs on like Python and things like that. So although I don't actually know how to code, if I have to code to an extent, I'm able to. That's actually something that I'm like trying to hone in, but I would really recommend that you take a more technical class if you have the opportunity to. And also something that I really benefited from was in all of my classes, instead of just writing a paper, I normally made them into some sort of like magazine. So with every single job application, instead of sending them a boring work sample, I created a graphic art basically, and I would create some sort of publication that was like, hey, look at my work, and instead of just saying like, I could write. So that was really helpful because a lot of the places that I was applying to, such as CUP and MAS and all these more think tank / design-oriented urbanism organizations are really heavily focused on one, data, and two, visualization of data. So I feel that I don't really have those skills 100% as with people who maybe are in planning and have to work with Photoshop and SketchUp and all those things. But if you apply yourself and like even just like start using all those softwares, like even the most like minuscule of ways, like you could really like make it look like you know what you're doing, and that's sometimes all you need to like get in.
Did you have any projects for any classes that you were able to use to send in as samples?
Yeah, actually a couple with Tari's class I did in the urban economy with her, and then also with Larson for my Queens Historical Society internship. I had created a report, and those were like the initial phases of my like interest in design, and I hope that my interest has gotten, my skills have I think gotten better since that time, and just this weekend I submitted my capstone project, which is now a requirement of the master's program here. And what's really great is that instead of just submitting a paper, our new advisors now give us the liberty to do something that's within your interest and that will benefit you. So if you know that you're interested in data, challenge yourself. I only took one mapping class, but my entire senior capstone project is a series of maps and graphs, and I put it in such a way that's on a website. It looks like a New York Times article or something. And although this is very new to me and it doesn't look by any means what I have in my mind that I want to create, it's the first step. And I just encourage you to take that first step.
Yeah, Melissa, could I put a plug for
Yes.
our fall classes?
Yeah.
So if you do have interest in GIS, or actually we're going to also offer a class in video production. These are classes that will be available in the fall. So the GIS class is being taught by our new colleague, who is geographer and planner, Professor Dwayne Baker, and it's called Mapping Urban Infrastructure. And then we have a course on Saturday mornings that is being taught by a filmmaker on video production.
And the video, some students have started doing videos for their internship projects, and they can't. Yes.
Yeah.
So and those come out really nicely. So I'm wondering, how many of you guys had to submit some kind of sample of work for when you were applying for jobs?
I don't know if I had to, but I included my internship final project in my portfolio, with my resume, and I think it definitely gave me a leg up. I showed them it's a different satellite.
Shows
It's
you
what
what
I
you can do.
Yeah, something that I have done.
I sent lots of like my posters, because after I had been involved in the research, we had presented in like national conferences, you know, pictures of the baboon and hypothesis and that 7-step things. I forget all the stuff that I learned in school. But yeah, it was like a giant poster. I did it twice, and 2 separate posters I presented, and I uploaded it as like writing samples to my job, just to show that I was involved in sort of like academic research.
And I included my my capstone project from Professor Wakefield's class.
Oh,
When we
great.
did a redevelopment project for Flushing Bay. So I included that.
And that was 373, Urban
Yeah.
Studies 373. So I don't think you have to, I think if you focus that, especially as you get towards your senior year, really some of these projects that we ask you to do, really try to focus on them. But you can also revise them later and try to work on them more if you want to submit them to jobs. But they're always a good starting basis for things.
Even at work now, I save the projects I'm working on and just to put them in a folder just to keep for who knows when.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions?
I feel like you guys should get involved in more leadership initiatives, so that just in case you do feel like you want to come and use the routes. Which one is it? Routes?
Either, sure.
Oh, either. Phase 5. If you want to use the route that I went on, as far as like the free schooling and trying to get a graduate degree for free, you guys can try to get more involved in school. Maybe the department needs some sort of assistant. Maybe a professor needs something. Just try to speak.
Urban Studies Club.
Urban Studies Club, and get involved in those clubs. Try to become the president of that club. That shows leadership initiative. If you do want to eventually work at a school, that's like a major thing that people look for.
Michelle, do you have a question?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to get involved with kids equipment, or how you got involved with that? You mentioned clubs, but was it time?
Well, for tuition remission, the way that I'm trying to get it across to you guys is more for your graduate degree. So as far as your undergrad degree here at Queens College, you should take advantage of that and the fact that it's the price that it is, and just pay it. But for your graduate degree, I kind of advise people to spend more money on that. Not because I work at NYU, I'm telling you to spend more money on a graduate degree, but at the same time, it's a degree that sometimes it's a terminal degree, so you want to show that you went to whatever school is, kind of a high caliber to finish off with. And to get into a job at a school, you would need a full-time job. You won't get tuition remission benefits if you're part-time. So you need to have your leadership experience and all that stuff and bring it to when you're applying to school. And you're not applying to be like, a director of anything in the school. When I applied, I was just little buddy's assistant, person's assistant. So, and then you kind of build your way up there.
You can also get tuition, you can also work at CUNY and get tuition remission at any of the CUNY schools for a graduate degree.
A lot of employers will do it too. Like I'm in union and they will pay for 2 classes a year up to a certain, undergrad or graduate. So I'm going to be taking advantage of that because my position is focused a lot on wildlife, whereas my bachelor's was environmental studies. So I bring that a different side to it. So I'm going to probably take some kind of ecology, field biology course this summer just to better advance me in my current position. So when you are job searching, look into that employer. They might have incentive to, send you back to school and pay for you because they want you to be the best that you can be.
Because
So.
I do want to go back to grad school. One, I have such variety of options in my head, and I don't know which to go first. And then when it comes to the job, where to go and how to get help get grad school.
Okay, well, we'll talk then. I literally do that when I go to work tomorrow. That's what I do in my day job. So I'll just talk to me. Anybody can talk to me.
One thing when you are starting to look for jobs, you need to be really diligent with sending out your resumes. I would spend every day I designated a minimum of an hour, and I just sent my resume to everything that interested me. Anything that was environmental education, anything that I was like, I could see myself doing was in my field. I sat and I sent out emails and resumes constantly. I got a few interviews, but for the mass that I sent out, the amount that I heard back, it can be discouraging, but if you have to just stay with it, like I did it every single day. And I actually first started, I was selling solar panels a month after graduating, and then I did that for about a month or 2, and then I got the DEC
I almost did that job too.
But having that on my resume got my current supervisor's attention because he's like,
interesting.
he's like, I'm really
too hard to get selling solar panels, I think, right?
Yeah,
It's
I almost did that too.
I hear a lot of
It's
people
easy.
considering that.
It's you don't even need a degree to do it. But I was excited about it because it's renewable energy. So when I was going up to the doors, I was like, "Yeah, guys, you want to get solar panels?" And I mean, I was going door to door. I couldn't ever have imagined myself doing that. But it was an experience that I actually go back to, and I learned a lot. It was a month or 2 doing it, and it was out in snowstorm. It was last year. It was snowstorm, like 3 feet of snow I was trucking through, and then the next day it was like 70 degrees. I forget what, it was February last year. But having that on my resume, my boss was intrigued. He wanted to hear about my experience with Trinity. And so, take what you can if it interests you. It doesn't have to be permanent right there, but stay diligent, and then you can use that to keep moving forward. But just don't give up.
Do you have any suggestions for, you had some, maybe you can address this too. I know that a lot of students, when I'm talking to them, a lot of jobs, if you find them like on these databases like Indeed, if it says minimum 3 years experience, but
I ignored
It's
it.
just, yeah, I was just gonna say to add to Maggie's point, like a lot of these jobs have, this long list of requirements, and I just apply to them anyway, as
Yeah.
long as you have some of the requirements, because all you need to do is get your foot in the door. Because I did not have all the requirements that they asked for to get my job,
There's
but
no
once
way
I got
you
in
can.
there, once they saw my resume, I guess they decided to give me a chance, and once I got in there for the interview, it worked out. But I would say definitely don't. If you see something a little bit out of your league, or you think it's out of your league, it's probably not. Just apply for it anyway.
The worst thing that's gonna happen is you just don't hear from them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like you get in trouble for applying for something that you're not qualified for. It's they just
That is
Oh, dare you.
yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, so I've seen the same thing with city jobs. They'll be looking for someone with a doctorate degree, and I feel like their strategy is to ask for a lot and see what they get in terms of applicants. And for Samantha, I want to know exactly how discouraging it is. So would you say that 10% of all the resumes?
I'm Maggie. No, that's fine. I just didn't know who you're talking.
Yeah, I'm
What
sorry.
was your question?
So, how discouraging exactly would you say? 10% of all the resumes you send out result in some kind of response? Or
I mean,
is it
I sent out a
half
lot.
percent?
I was sent out a lot, but that was because I was determined to find something. I didn't get discouraged because I just stayed with it. I just stayed positive that I would find something because for me this was a career change. So I knew where I wanted. I wasn't going to just take anything. So I had an idea in mind and a certain field. So I knew it was going to be, would take some time. So you just don't get discouraged. It's going to happen. And then if you go on an interview and it doesn't work out, that's just you take what you did at that interview and then you see where maybe you fell short and you revise it for your next one. Use each thing as a learning experience to move yourself and better yourself forward and just stay positive.
I have to dovetail
Come along.
off of that, use each interview as something, because I went on the weirdest interview. So it was at Columbia, and I was just going to be a lab assistant or something because I had done the research, whatever. They thought that I was a good match. So I went in, and it was the principal investigator, which, the woman who runs the lab. She came in with her grad students and all her undergrad, helper people. And it was about more than 10 people, and they were all interviewing me at the same time. And they were like, okay, here's a question for you. If you were a superhero, who would you be? And I was sitting there I didn't know how does that help me or you on an interview? To me, I was just dumbstruck. I was sitting in a room at Columbia. I thought that the interview would have been more professional, but they asked me that. But that's what it is. It's an experience that I wasn't expecting. And then the next time someone asked me, who would you be if you were a superhero? I knew what I said Captain Planet. But next time I was ready for that dumb question. So
Another thing that I would recommend is, and when I was finishing the undergrad portion of my degree last year, is I've been following along with a lot of different institutions that I really like, and in a way, I don't know how effective this will be just yet, but I've been showing face at events and becoming friends of organizations in some capacity, even if it just means attending events and meeting some of the staff. Just last month I was at a place, a forum where all of the different speakers were basically from the institutions that were places that I would one day maybe think of applying to. And after you go to these events, time after time, you actually do see familiar faces, and the circle is actually really small in a way, even though it's a big city. So I would also say if there's something that you're interested in, start bookmarking on your computer organizations that you like and follow them on, even though this sounds silly, follow them on social media, and that personal contact really could actually go a long way, and it's actually been a big part in me being able to actually find internships and find jobs was actually through showing face, actually even on social media, which is kind of strange, but it is true. So yeah, I would just recommend that.
if anybody likes the parks, my internship with Bram Gunther, he does Science of the Living City, and there's events all throughout Manhattan. If you ever see those advertised, go, because there's parks people there, there's people from all other environmental organizations that you can go network on your own.
We'll have to start putting those on the list if I don't know if I can do that. Yes.
So I kind of stepped my foot in a lot of doors in my career in QC and like me networking in smaller organizations. So one thing that I want to like understand better is like how to like communicate that with like a lot of prospective employers or just people in general. For example, like I started Queens College as only a few of you know me as like urban studies major, then I quickly shuffled over into anthropology, so I'm now an anthropology major. But with a background in design and media, like how do I combine all those elements in a way that's not kind of to bore the prospective employer to death, that kind of because like my career path is not just one path, it's like a forest.
Well, then you have to kind of, I would say you have to portray yourself as someone that is just someone that is a jack of all trades. If you have the ability to speak to a media person the way that you have the ability to speak to an anthropologist doing an ethnography, and you should be able to be proud of that instead of being like confused about it. But you have to be able to find your own like dialogue about how these things connect, because no one's gonna find it for you.
And
Like
then
you have
you
to
would-
be able to map that out yourself.
You would put that into a cover letter.
Yes.
The cover letter is for you to make a narrative about how your experiences fit together, and why it all makes sense. And that's, you just sort of make it make sense in the cover letter. But I think the Office of Career Services helps with cover letters.
Yes,
So
they do, and resumes, yes.
yeah, so you can take advantage of that.
I have a
too.
follow-up to that. I'm wondering if you guys could talk about how you prepared your cover letters and resumes and what kind of resources you used to produce them.
Sure. So I actually used the Queens College to help kind of organize my resume. Because I also had a different career before I came back to school. So I was trying to figure out like how to make my resume look, it's more clean and like more like I want to do something different. So they helped me with that a lot.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I would definitely recommend it. It was helpful. Yeah.
I kind of just wrote mine myself. I looked at Google and I see how do you write a cover letter, and then just to kind of reiterate, I was the only one that could kind of produce my story about why I would be good at working at a school, because who cares that you were picking poop up in South Africa? Why does that mean that you should be in school? But it was the fact that I was, taking leadership during the whole research thing. My colleague wanted to eat yogurt in front of the baboons and almost got attacked, but I had to like pick up for his slack. And like, so showing like leadership like that, and then mapping your story out and saying that for me it was like I had worked with professors and other grad students, so I should work with other people that are doing stuff in higher ed. But it has to be like your own story, and it has to be very specific to the job that you're applying for. Every cover letter is going to be different.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, I had one like general cover letter, and then depending on the position, I would tweak it to fit into what I was doing. Make sure you change it.
Similarly, at Google,
Yeah.
and I used Photoshop to kind of make my resume stand out more than just doing it on a Word doc. So just different things, depending on, again, like I've been tending to apply to more design-oriented urban places. So that's a big appeal. So knowing that they want someone with design skills is something that I had to purposely do when I applied. So.
Resume must look flat.
And I think design skills help you out a lot in the career market now. I think not for every job, but I think it's helpful to be able to package things. There's so much that's oriented towards the web and anybody else? Questions? All right. Well, I think we can. If you want to get some more food, and then you can just sort of talk one-on-one to people and mill around because we still have plenty of time. So why don't we just do that? So you still have questions and you don't want to ask them in front of the group. Feel free to just.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.